What if I told you you can get what you want without being pushy about it? In fact, people who get the biggest promotions, the biggest raises, and the biggest opportunities have all figured out how to do this, and now you will too. Because that's what's actually the most important. You cannot be pushy. You have to be smart when you speak. As an instructor at Columbia University and somebody who has spent over 10 years working on TV, where my entire job was to get people to say yes to me, I'm going to share for the very first time the 4 things I learned that completely changed how I now ask for things. And the best part, the opportunities. No more waiting. No more crossing your fingers. No more hoping and wondering if you are sounding too much. Just pure clarity and technique on what to say and how to say it so you know how to ask for what you want. Because in this video, I'm going to do something pretty unique. I'm going to take you through the exact journey of how I figured this all out. Now, I've never shared this on video before, but I'll be sharing the real turning points, the research behind why the strategy works, and how you can take my exact strategy and formula and apply it yourself at work. In fact, all of this can be found in my best-selling communications book called Smart, Not Loud: How to Get Noticed at Work for All the Right Reasons, where I teach smart and ambitious professionals just like you how to unlock the best opportunities without needing to be loud, aggressive, or obnoxious about it. Because I will tell you right now, that is not my style either. And I want to be clear. I was not born knowing how to ask for things. In fact, growing up in a pretty traditional family, I was actually told to not ask for things. Because if I did, it would be considered rude, ungracious, or even out of line. So instead, what I did was I just kept my head down and I just worked hard hoping somebody would notice me. Well, guess what? You go out into corporate America, you realize it doesn't work like that. And perhaps, like me, you've experienced this too. Maybe you're working in a corporate Western workplace and you're seeing that there are certain people in your office that seem to always get ahead. They seem to always get promoted, and they seem to always get that leadership opportunity, that front-facing visible position. And you're just thinking, well, wait, I'm just as smart as them, if not smarter, and I deserve that opportunity, if not more. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, putting yourself out there, that is the strategy. In fact, stay until the very end of this video because the 4th point is the one that changed everything for me. So here's the first thing that I learned to get what I want without being pushy. Stop assuming people know what I want. It sounds so simple and it actually makes a lot of sense. But I'll tell you right now, so many smart professionals hope that their work will speak for itself. Or worse, that others will just know they want it. But here's the truth. People are not mind readers. Your manager is not a mind reader. And even when a big raise, an opportunity, or a promotion might be an obvious want, your boss isn't going to give it to you unless you show interest, you ask for it, and you follow up diligently. In fact, in chapter 1 of my book, Smart Not Loud, I start off with this story that really highlights why this is so important. In chapter 1, I talked about this guy. His name is Ben. And Ben was just passed over for a big opportunity. And this was a career-changing opportunity. And instead of it being given to him, his manager gave it to his colleague. Now, this bothered Ben so much that one day, Ben decided to ask his manager about it. So this is what he did. He walks into his manager's office and goes, "Hey, just wondering, why didn't I get that opportunity? I'm hardworking, I turn things in on time. Why was it given to someone else?" This is what happened. Ben's boss walks straight to a whiteboard in his office and he starts drawing circles on the whiteboard. He then turns to Ben and goes, "Ben, You see this? There are so many things going on in my life. Each circle represents one. I'm thinking about my work. I'm thinking about our clients. I'm thinking about my own boss. I'm thinking about my kids. I'm thinking about my kids and their soccer game. I'm thinking about my dog who just hurt his leg. How can you expect me to remember what you want when there are so many things currently occupying my brain? I remember when I first heard this story, it really struck me hard because it is so true. You can be the smartest, the hardest working, and the most capable, but you cannot expect other people to think about you and know what you want. In fact, if you're afraid to ask for it because you don't want to get rejected, take a look at this research. Researchers Frances Flynn and Vanessa Bones ran a study where they asked people to go make direct requests of strangers. For example, borrow a phone, ask for directions, or ask for a favor. But before they went out, they had to predict how many times they thought they would get rejected. Well, here's what happened. They assumed more people would say no than what actually did. In fact, they underestimated it by as much as 50%. Now, think about what that means for your work. How many times have you maybe slightly hinted at wanting something? You dropped a comment hoping your boss would just pick up on it. Maybe you waited to be offered something instead of actually asking for it. Don't be like the old me and assume people would just know. The research says it. The door is way more open more often than you think, but you just gotta ask for it and not feel bad about doing it. So here's a quick communication tip this week. I really want you to think about one thing you would love to happen for you at work. What is it? Then say the actual sentence. I would love to lead that project. I would love to be considered for that role. I'd love to give an update to our team this week, just a 2-minute presentation. It's not a hint, it's not a hope, it's an ask. And it's not a long-winded explanation, or it's not you being pushy, it's just a straightforward request. Which brings me to my next point. The second thing I learned to get what I want without being pushy was using one single word in all of my requests, and that is because. Let me tell you how I figured this one out. So when you work on TV, especially in the news industry, you have a lot of meetings. Specifically, it's what we call our daily editorial meetings. And this is where all of us reporters and producers, we would come together every single morning and we would sit around a large conference table and talk about what we think should be on the news that night. Yes, this is something that truly happens in every single TV newsroom around the country, around the world, every single day. Well, when I was a young reporter, I often found myself struggling in these meetings because I would muster up this courage to finally pitch this idea that I had. But I would feel like people wouldn't hear it, wouldn't take it seriously, and maybe just wouldn't even look at me. This frustrated me so much because I would often see other people with similar ideas get that resounding excitement, that follow-up question. And people would be like, oh, wow, that's so great. Let's talk about it. What do you think? So what I did was I decided to study why certain ideas landed more powerfully than others. And here's what I realized. People get a lot more support and credibility when they say the word because. It sounds so crazy, but there's something really psychological about being able to connect what you want to what matters. And you do that by saying the word because in the middle of your sentence. In fact, just last week, I had a member in our private communications community called Present by Soulcast Media. And it's where I meet with our group and I help them on all things communications live. Now, every month is also a brand new topic. And I remember one time, one of the members, her name was Jenny, she said that she had a really hard time getting people to take her ideas seriously at work. So, of course, my advice in our program was I said, when you are sharing something, use the word because to qualify your point. So this was the example I gave her. I said, you could say, I think we need to consider this new development. Okay, but how do you make it more powerful? You can say that same idea, but do it this way. We should consider this development downtown because 300 families are about to be displaced, and this location makes a lot of sense. You hear that because? Here's another example. She could say, I finished updating this file. Okay, but this is better. I finished updating this file to streamline the information because in the past, it was taking over 20 minutes just to find one file. So much more powerful, right? Does she love this? Yes, because it was actually the same story, but completely different result because one word, because, giving it that gravitas. By the way, there's amazing research that explains why the word because is so powerful. Harvard psychologist Ellen Langer ran what's now called the copy machine study. So she had researchers walk up to people waiting in line to use a copy machine. And when they asked, may I use the copy machine? About 60% of people said, sure. But when they added a reason, may I use a copy machine because I'm in a rush, people moved to the side 94% of the time. 94. One word, huge difference. And the because was not pushy. So the next time you ask for anything, a deadline, extension, a budget, a seat at the table, never let the ask stand alone. Attach because it can dramatically change how your ask lands. By the way, if you're loving this video, don't forget to hit subscribe right now. As an instructor at Columbia University and a best-selling author, I'm really committed to helping you elevate how you're recognized at work and help you build the confidence to ask for what you want. I drop a new video every week, so do subscribe so you never miss a video. Now, here's my next point. The third thing I learned to get what I want without being pushy was to start asking for more advice. This is one of my favorite ones because it is so subtle, but so powerful. For years, I assumed that when I wanted something, I needed to convince, I needed to defend. But one day, as I was grabbing lunch with one of my mentors, he taught me that I needed to think about this entirely differently. And what was amazing about this was this flip is really what makes somebody a great communicator. He said, if you ever want something, frame it like you're asking someone for advice. He even gave me this example. He said, use a sentence. If you were me trying to get this, what would you do? Here's the research that explains why this works so well. A study published in Management Science found people who ask for advice are not seen as less competent. By the way, that's what a lot of us are afraid of. When we ask, the data shows the opposite. When you ask someone for advice, you're actually flattering their expertise. You're giving them that ownership in their success. Psychologically, they shift from being your evaluator to now being your advocate. Read that again. Your evaluator becomes your advocate. That is influence without an ounce of pushiness. So here's what I want you to do. Think of one thing you've been maybe trying to convince someone of and replace the pitch with a question. I would love your advice on this. How would you approach it? Then listen. You are not giving up your power when you do this. You're actually multiplying it. And the best part, it has nothing to do with pushing or defending. You're simply making someone feel like they're a part of the conversation, and you're making them feel like they're really smart. And in turn, they will feel empowered to help you. Which brings me to my final point. The fourth thing I learned was to rethink what pushy means. So this is the one I'm a little embarrassed to admit because it's the one that actually costs me the most money and the most opportunity. Because right now, when you hear the word pushy, what do you think of? A salesperson? Someone trying to push their product on you? Someone who's only thinking about themselves, their quota, and what they can get out of a conversation. That's what I used to think. Now, if you're like me, you're probably thinking, that's not the kind of person I want to be. And for years, I said that. And that quietly affected what I said and how I said it. Anytime I was about to ask for something, an opportunity, a raise, or even just possibilities to get on a project, a little voice would say, don't be so salesy. Don't be that salesperson. So what would I do? I would just shrink my ask. I'd water it down. I'd dilute it. Or worse, I would just not make it at all. In fact, I remember the moment where I realized I needed to reframe this. When my book, Smart Not Loud, first came out, I was invited to give a keynote. And I remember telling myself, I don't want to focus on the book because I don't want to sound like I'm trying to push it to the audience. But in the middle of my talk, I started telling a story straight from one of the chapters. This was part of my speech. And it was also because I genuinely loved that story. My excitement, it just spilled out of me. And I couldn't help it. I had this smile on my face, my voice went up, and I was just genuinely happy to share the story with the audience. And do you know what happened? You know what happened after that talk? People lined up and started asking me questions about the story and about the book. Not because I pushed the book on them saying you must buy it. I barely mentioned the title. I only said it once. But they lined up because they resonated with the story. But not just that, they felt my excitement as I was talking about the content in the book. They wanted to know more. That was the day I realized nobody in that room experienced me as being pushy. They experienced me as happy, excited, and generous with the tips I wanted to share. So what should you do? Instead of thinking you're being pushy, I want you to reframe it as you are just so excited to share something with other people. That's it. In fact, the research says it absolutely works. Researchers found that when someone approaches a conversation showing enthusiasm, joy, happiness, other people are much more willing to listen and stay engaged. It's called emotional contagion. And it's the idea that emotions literally spread from person to person like a ripple effect. Now, one of the most famous studies on this, when one person brought positive energy into a group discussion, well, the entire group became more cooperative, performed better, and even rated each other more favorably. Isn't that crazy? One person's genuine enthusiasm changed the whole room. Think about that. Your excitement isn't self-serving or pushy. It's actually contagious. And it's actually the best way to put yourself out there to get people to listen. So here's what I want you to do. Before your next ask, find one thing that you are genuinely excited about and lead with that. Say it out loud. Say the actual words. And don't forget to smile. I'm really excited about this because, and then give your reason. Notice what changes in the room, because when that excitement is real and people feel it, it doesn't feel pushy. It feels like they're invited into this conversation. So these were the 4 things. These were the things that I learned about asking without being pushy, and it completely changed how I ask for things now. I stopped hinting. I started asking directly because the yes is actually more often than you think. I learned to attach a because to every ask, and I stopped pushing my position and started asking people for advice, basically turning my evaluators into my advocates. And I redefined what pushy means because excitement is what draws people to listen. And the best part, you don't need to be louder. You don't need to be aggressive. You do not need to feel like you have to be someone you are not. For me, it just required me to be smarter in my approach. And that is exactly what my book, Smart Not Loud, is all about. So if this resonated with you, please share this video with someone in your life who really deserves to ask for more and get it, because they have what it takes. And if you want to go deeper on any of these, my book, Smart Not Loud, is linked below. And if you want a free guide on how to make that ask with confidence, comment the word SMART below and I will directly DM you the link to download it. And of course, please like this video and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new video that drops, because I'm committed to sharing and teaching you how to be that amazing communicator at work. I look forward to seeing you in our next video.